Okay, here's an example of an evaluation and analysis of performance. So the person I was watching was rugby. They played 10, and their skill strengths were their kicking. First of all, in the preparation phase, they kept the ball in two hands, and they had their eye on the ball at all times, and they looked nice and balanced. And in the execution phase, they put their hands out in front of them, followed through. They hit the ball directly in the middle, and their ankle was nicely below their knee, and and then they drove through the middle of the ball. In the recovery phase, they extended their lower leg and were pointing their toes, which allowed a really effective spiral, and therefore the kicks were able to go a lot further because they were creating less resistance as it was going through the air. So their pop passing was really, really good as well. So again, in the preparation phase, they had two hands on the ball, and they had their elbows away from their body, and they were just raising the ball in the vertical and releasing it in the execution phase just nice and gently, so that when the other player came through, they were able to hit it at full speed. And in the recovery phase, you could see that he was following the pop pass immediately, and therefore the support play was in line, which is very good. His long passing was excellent, and this was both off the left hand and right hand. So in the preparation phase, you could see that he had it on his hip, which is called loading the ball. And then in the execution phase, he was pushing with the rear hand, pushing his hand through the ball. And then in the recovery phase, that you could see his hands were extended towards the target he was aiming for, which meant that there was again a really effective spiral, creating less air resistance, and also a lot of power, which meant the pass got there nice and quickly. So the skill's weakness was his tackling. So with this, he had quite static feet. He had quite a high centre of mass, and what he should have had is a low and wide base. So in that was the preparation phase. In the execution, he put his head to the left and his shoulder to the left, which is quite dangerous, and it also doesn't give you as much power. And in the recovery phase, he wasn't putting his arms around the player, so he wasn't able to bring him down. His sidestep wasn't very effective either. So in the preparation phase, his body was quite high. So again, a high centre of mass causing instability. And then when he was going through the execution phase and he was pushing his foot into the ground, there wasn't a massive amount of flexion at the knee. So therefore, he wasn't able to push off in the recovery phase towards the direction he wanted to go. His handoff wasn't very effective. When he actually made contact with the player in the preparation phase, he'd already had the ball under his hand for about 5 seconds, so the player knew what was the opposition knew what was happening. And so you try and disguise it a little bit more than that by keeping the ball in two hands. But he had full extension of the arm, and therefore wasn't able to create a lot of power. So in the execution phase, he should have been forcing the player away, but wasn't able to. And in the recovery phase, he should have been raising his legs to try and get away from the tackle, which he wasn't able to do. The strength for tactics were his decision making. He was able to make effective decisions about either to kick, to show and go, or to pass, and that was because he held the ball in two hands at all times, and he was always in absolutely the right position to be able to make those decisions, which was really, really good. He dropped in the pocket really effectively, so he dropped back from the scrum half, giving himself those extra 2 to 3 seconds to be able to make those decisions, and also then to be able to kick and clear behind the wingers, which he was able to see because he dropped into the pocket. So that's an excellent tactic. And again, with that, he was able to then kick for territory. So he had the skill to be able to do it, but also the vision to be able to see where he was supposed to kick. And he kept putting the opposition back into their own half, which is always tough and puts them under a lot of pressure. So the contact decisions weren't very effective. So this is whether he should be going into contact or not. And he wasn't able to be able to sort of make those decisions effectively, and I think that was due to the pressure of the contact and him maybe not having that as one of his strengths. So that was quite poor. So he was going into contact against players that he shouldn't do, and you should be looking for mismatches, but the mismatches were against him, not for him. Carrying or passing, he's got a really effective pass, so he should have been using that more as opposed to carrying it and taking it into contact. So drawing the player towards him and then passing, but he wasn't able to make those decisions. So again, tactically, that was quite a weakness. And the other thing was his up and under, is when to perform the up and under, and what he did, he performed it in a situation where he needed to clear his lines. So the opposition received the ball in an advantageous position for them. Okay, so the strengths for his fitness were his speed, reaction time, and power. So for the speed, he was very, very quick, and he was able to get round players. He was able to find the space and then be able to accelerate through the gap. And then once he was beyond the opposition's first defensive line, he was be able to accelerate into the open space. So his speed was very, very effective. His reaction time when he was receiving the passes were really good. So from the scrum half, he was able to react really, really quickly to the ball coming up from the scrums or from the bottom of rucks, and that gave him extra time to be able to make decisions in relation to his kicking or passing, which was really good. His powerful kicking was excellent, so he was able to drill all the way through the ball, and he was able to get a significant amount of distance in relation to his power of kicks. Okay, and then for his weaknesses, these were his strengths. So he lost the ball in contact quite a few times. So he had the ball ripped off him. So this shows that he hasn't got a lot of upper body strength, and that's obviously what you need when you're playing rugby. The other thing is power in contact. So this is in relation to rucks or mauls. When he actually joined a ruck or maul, he didn't have a significant impact on it in the positive. There was a low amount of leg drive, and again, no muscular real force from his upper body. So therefore, the power was significantly a weakness. His agility, the ability to change direction, wasn't evident really, and that was almost lacking because he hasn't got a sidestep as well. But throughout, there wasn't a lot of changing of direction, which is really important as it's an evasion game. So that's one of his weaknesses. The overall effectiveness was he had a really good performance. He was able to dominate in relation to possession and also position of the pitch, and that's because of his effective kicking. So he had a really good skill set. He was able to bring players onto him because he had excellent distribution with his left and his right hand, and also his pop passes as well. His communication was very effective as well, and that allowed players to understand what he was actually doing. The fitness components were his speed. So once he was in space, he was very, very effective and dominated in the wide spaces. But as I mentioned before, one of the issues was his tackling and his strength. So for that reason, I'm going to select his main weakness as being his tackling. The reason this is really important within the game is everybody has to be able to tackle, whether it's in set piece or in open play. If you don't make a tackle, there's nobody behind you to be able to support it. And the 10 channel is one of the most important ones because it's the split between the backs and the forwards, and it's the one that gets attacked the most. And so for that reason, it's absolutely essential that he needs to be able to develop his tackling to be able to dominate in that position. So what I'm going to do is set up an 8-week training program. The reason I'm going to do that is to allow physiological adaptations to take place in relation to his strength, and then also skill adaptation, so he should be able to move from the associative to the autonomous phase with his tackling. The aim is, as I said, is to increase his tackling technique and also the success he has in his tackling. I'm going to do 2 sessions a week because I think that he's a club player. He looks to be of a good standard, so he'll be able to combine this with his other training as well. This will allow our overload to occur, but then also prevent reversibility. I'm going to work on his strength as well as his power and his technique. So there's going to be the intensity is going to be based around his rate of perceived exertion, but also the 1 rep max test for his strength. I'm going to look at 40-minute sessions, and that way I can have a relative intensity, but not make them too long so that he gets fatigued and then potentially misses the next session because contact is quite draining. So how I'm going to measure this is by completing a tackle grid, and this should be how quickly he can perform 15 effective tackles. And what I'll be expecting him to do is increase the amount of tackles he's able to perform effectively at the halfway stage and then at or the end as well. So the test itself is a tackle box. You have 4 attacking players, and each one individually will come into the box and try and get past him, and the person in the middle has to then tackle each one of those 4 people consistently for 3 minutes, and you can see how many tackles you can achieve. Okay.